Decay aya yuxatini. The cut you on. Talk day yakunahin. Gus sukatina hateti waits ina ya itikuk. Hosatin kakao jikit. Twasa koa. Ye awa. Akin awe ikuat ea. The cut yagi. Chitlay aya talk day yakunahini. Ye awa. Achtuasagu koa. Quash ayanach. Yuktikan is the cut waits ina ha hiti yich. Yewe achtuati tag. Achtu yik yach koha. Adata we yuch achtetani. Data tinach sahayati adatu tuchtetan. Was tag aya. Akinoe yagi. Yewe yekuat. Kutan koa yayati a. Yakunache kakan. Hakinaye wuti. Yewe. Khatkiwawus adatawe. Yak utat. One qanins yak sit gausan, yak sit gausan itach, yak yagi, yak khan. Gwell kleshkatain tlingitun de tani ko a hilwasa oti. A data tinech sahayati, gwell jagut kha utusatin. Wasa yagachtu sakha. Ye owe adat utachtetan one qanins. Adat owe. It's great to see everybody. It is winter's approaching. There are a bunch of Tlingit language folks who enjoyed the show Game of Thrones, probably until the last season. And they would always say something like winter is coming or something. So we'd always say that in Tlingit, which is which maybe I'll show you. And then I'll show you in a second. But I said, maybe I need more lights in the room. It's like kind of darker out now. It's all dark in this room, which is maybe fine. But the days are shorter in the winter. So these are things that I think about as well. It's like just talking about the seasons. We call a season Yach. And so maybe we'll do a little bit of time stuff today, just because I think it's kind of fun. And maybe some weather stuff as well. What else did I say? Oh, and then someone asked about like saying good morning. And you could say good morning, good midday, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I think all of those things are fine. I think it kind of comes from an English speaking perspective into Tlingit, which is okay. I think it's okay. There's a whole bunch of stuff that does. But we also need just general things to say when we see each other, you know. And we could talk about that a little bit as well. When I saw these two elders one time, and they obviously hadn't seen each other in a long time, but they just sat down and started talking Tlingit. Like there wasn't a whole lot of, hey, but sometimes I'll see stuff like that with speakers as well. So I set up a little slide here. It's kind of blank, but I'll use this for a couple different things. One is doing this, I'll show you folks a little something here. So we'll just say this word together. Everybody say, Yak-a.
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 And can you tell me what this translates to?
Good.
Good.
Right? So they are good or it is good. Either way. So as far as ways we can sort of mess around with this a little bit is there's actually this space right here, which is an object pronoun. So you could change that. And so what's interesting is we have this unmarked pronoun. We have quite a few unmarked pronouns. What that means is there's something here. I'm gonna move. Coming through. So there's something there, but we don't see it. We don't hear it. So we have unmarked third person pronouns pretty often, which means if we're to do the same thing in English, and if I was going to say in English, I am good, you are good, they are good, it is good, to do those same things with Tlingit, if I was to speak English with Tlingit grammar, a little bit of it, I'd say I am good, you are good, good, good. So both the they and the it wouldn't have anything there, which is, you got to kind of get used to that stuff. So I could change, I could change this pronoun if I wanted to. Anybody know what that would be saying if I said Lichéesh?
I'm good.
I am good. What about Iyake?
You.
You are. What about Yiyake?
They,
Not they.
y'all.
Y'all. There you go. Ye is y'all. Ye, y'all, ye, y'all.
That tracks.
What about Hayake?
We,
We are
our,
good. We are good. All right, then it's true. We're pretty good. I'm not trying to brag. So this would be they are good, or it is good. Works either way. This, how about this one?
that is good.
Not quite. Did we have another prediction?
They.
Yeah, they plural. Like, still trying. I would say they all are good, right? I think that's how I'm sort of doing this. Like, I think it has ungendered pronouns for the most part. So trying to match them to English is always interesting. And especially in terms of making language more inclusive, which I think is a good thing. So another thing we could do to this is that is how we change the pronoun. The pronoun talks about who the verb, who we're talking about. Sometimes we're talking about who's doing the verb. Sometimes we're talking about who the verb is happening to. And then sometimes uh, it's a little bit different. And so by that, I mean, you're using an object pronoun. So technically, it does sound kind of like a little bit like a Hollywood Native American, and you say me good. Like that's how the grammar works. Um, there's another thing you can do with this phrase. So we're going to put this little suffix on the end, and this means it's a good thing. So this is another, it's a little trick that you can do. There's a little bit to it, but for now you could sort of throw an I on the end. And so if you have chitzin, you could have chitzini, and that means a strong thing. So it basically takes a verb and it turns it into an adjective. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because this is, then you have some options here. Let's see. I'm going to do this one. And then oops, I got to make my little square big. And then I'll do, and then I'll do same. And okay, so now we got all these good things. Whole bunch of good things. Everybody say Yak utat.
Hey. K-E.
Hey, dot.
Yak utat.
Hey.
And I do think when we switched it, like this part sometimes is a little bit hard to hear. So we went from yak to yak right? Let's just get that little extra vowel in there. So what do you think that is? Yak utat.
Morning.
Good morning. Now we'll say this one. Lichéesh sit gao san.
Decay sits san.
Lichéesh sit gao san.
Decay sikwa
san.
wasan.
Anybody know what that one is?
Good afternoon.
It's like good midday. So if it was right on the sort of noon hour, you can only say this for 1 minute. I'm just kidding. What about, we'll say this one. Lichéesh sit gao san itach.
Decay sits san. Itach.
Lichéesh sit gao san itach.
Decay sits san. Itach.
What would that one be?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, right? So this is a good thing, like an adjective. This is midday, and then this is after. So good, midday, after. It's a word order thing. Lichéesh chana.
Decay chana.
Lichéesh chana.
Yakkei hana.
Chana.
And what do you think that one would be?
Good evening.
Good evening. And this is just a good time for a reminder. If you put an underline on here, it's going to sound more like Lichéesh chana. So you can't do the thing, or else this chana means like a life partner. So the context could be, you know, people could get confused. Let's say you've got a life partner and you're traveling and you start talking about this chana and everyone's like, what is going on? Are they revealing their big scandal? No, they just mispronounced evening. Chana. This sound is like the jet airplane taking off, the wind, the cappuccino machine. Lichéesh tot.
Decay tat.
Lichéesh tot.
Yakkei tat.
And what would that one be?
Good night.
Good night. Yeah, away. So tot is night. Generally, chana is, I would say, after sundown, at or after sundown. And then tot would be, it's dark out. A long time ago, like they would say only the bad things were out at night, but we didn't have street lights and stuff. Like seriously, you can go out there and mess around. Things will come get you. Lichéesh yagi.
Yakkei yagi.
Lichéesh yagi.
Decay yagi.
And
Good day.
Good day. There we go. So there they are. So that's they work, and there's other things we can use for greetings as well. And let's see, there was also okay. Sheesh. Any other questions, things you've been thinking about?
Hune, how do you say congratulations again?
Oh, that's a good question. Did we go over that? Did I suggest something for?
No, I just wanted to learn it so I could tell Rasha and Paige that for their production last night.
Oh, yay. I missed it. What did I miss?
They did a documentary on the Queens and Kings of Juneau.
What? Amazing.
You can find a link on our homepage of KTOO.
Watch it. Absolutely. So we'll cover two of them. And then we can make some adjustments to some of them. So the first one, we'll say it and then I'll tell you what it is. Yidlaq.
Yidlaq.
Oh wait, this is two people? Hold on. Now I gotta. Oops. Okay, now we got two. So if this was one person who succeeded or defeated somebody, which is succeeding, right? But it could translate to both. You would say Yi Yidlaq.
Yadlaq.
Yi Yidlaq.
Yadlaq.
Yi Yidlaq.
Yadlaq.
If for some reason this back K didn't come out, it sounds a little bit like you scratched someone in the face. So maybe that's what you did to defeat them, but we're talking about. So this could mean you succeeded, you obtained it, or you defeated some. Because you could also, like if we played a little game of horse and you won, we played Gaudan, right? Which would be G, G, D, all right, G, W, D, so that's 6 shots, okay? You could say Khati Idlaq, you defeated me, right? So it's the same verb, but that verb has these multiple interpretations. So those of you who are into what the parts are, let's get a little long. These are the parts that are in there. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. And then I'm gonna show you, whoops, 100 point, all right. And then what happens when we change this? First, like what are these things that are in there? Second, what's the thing that we could change? Oh, I forgot one. Okay. Anybody know what this one is? This is jumping ahead for some of us. It's okay though.
Pronoun?
Say it again.
Pronoun? Yeah.
Yes, this is a third person pronoun, it or them. This one is the face of something. That's usually what it means. Like, and so we put nouns into verbs. That's just how we roll. This one is what we call a perfective marker. This is, so like English has tense because English talks about time a lot. Like it happened, it will happen, it is happening. I think it doesn't really factor time into the verb. Instead, it just sort of looks at, it's an event-driven language. What that means is when this thing gets activated, it says, we're looking at this verb strictly in terms of whether it or not it has happened. So now you could say yes or no. Has happened, hasn't happened. So that's what this marker does. And so there's the spots where things go. If you're going to start putting things in there to start moving the verb around in terms of like what we call a verb mode, it's going to happen in this same spot. Right next to that spot, we have I. And what do you all think the I is?
Pronoun.
That's a pronoun. So this is who it happens to. That's who does it. That's the order it goes in every time. So I is you. You succeeded. You obtained it. You defeated them or it. Here's Medusa. If you encounter Medusa, there's this plant called Lichéesh, which you don't eat and you don't put near your mouth because it'll kill you. But if you look through it, you won't turn to stone. So just a little insider secret. This is the classifier. If you have y in there, this perfective marker, and a classifier in what we call the plus I form. So in this case, you're going to have y. You could have d, si, z, sh, gl, sh, or j. Any of those, that means it did happen. Okay. Then you have glach, which is the verb root, which contains meaning. So to move this from you succeeded to you all succeeded, I changes to y. It could also change to ch, yachwadlach, I succeeded. It could change to tu, yautuwadlach, we succeeded. It could change to a nothing marker, a 0. Ayawadlaq. They succeeded. So now we're going to say you all succeeded. You did it. Congratulations. Yayidlaq.
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 And as we start moving things around a little bit, just a reminder, even if it's something new, something you're trying, you cannot signal uncertainty by going Yayidlaq, right? You cannot, there's no Ron Burgundy effects in the room. So you have to just keep it like everything here. Look at everything is low tone there. Everything. Ya, yi, glaq. Question, Wasa?
We all succeeded? What would that be?
Okay, so I will copy this. Oops. And I'm going to take, wait, let me duplicate this slide so we can we'll get to the KTOO one. But for now, we're going to take it out. Okay. So, first of all, I'll show you this one. So that once you have, as soon as you have mastered the perfective, then you could say, I succeeded. You can say it anyways. You don't have to wait until that. And you say, Yahwadlaq.
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 So, let me show you folks something else too, right before we make this next change. Again, I'm gonna try and figure out how to print some little cards, and what's gonna be on that little card is I'm gonna show you. I gotta bring my little zoom window up. So this slide shows you what the pronouns are. Okay. So when you learn where the object pronoun goes, which is always right at the front of the verb, it's right at the front. This is your list you can pick from. Happened to me, happened to us, happened to you, happened to y'all, happened to them, happened to someone, happened to something, did it to myself or did it to their self. Okay, that's your list. That's almost all of the object pronouns. So a lot of what you learn how to do in Tlingit is sort of pick one, pick another one, then everything starts mushing together. That's where it gets a little bit tricky. As far as who's doing it, I do it, you do it, I do it, we do it, you do it, y'all do it, they do it, always unmarked. You never put a third person subject in there. It just goes to nothing, which is wild, right? So I could say sleeping, I am sleeping, which I don't know why I would say it, but maybe you're like, hey, I'd be like, chata, go away, right? So I'd say chata to, well, that would be different. Okay, I gotta do eating, sorry. Chacha, tucha, icha, yicha, acha, ducha. So that's how those ones work. But I think when you're getting started moving these things around is, I'll print up some little cards. I don't know how I'll get them to everybody. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out, maybe. I'll just put them somewhere, like some website. Print yourself. I don't know how these things work. Someone will do it for me. So just like magically, but I got this idea from Waki Charles, who teaches Yuchtin. He teaches Yupik, and they have a similar type of grammatical thing. And so he made these little cards, like a business card side. And as he said, this is your new American Express. You don't leave home without it. And there's an artificial process to learning how to use this stuff. And I think you refer to the chart until you have these things memorized. But so we changed I to Y to Cha. So what are we going to change it to for we succeeded? Did you say to?
To.
Yeah, oh, well. So to is what we're going to change it to. Going back to here. So we change this to. And now we get yao, tu, wa, glaq. We succeeded, we obtained it, we defeated them. Everybody say, Yao tu wadlak.
Yao
Yao
tu wad
woodlock.
block.
Yao tu wadlak.
Yao
Yao
tu
woodlock.
block.
Yao tu wadlak.
Yao woodlock.
And there are, for those of you who are interested, there are books and chapters and handbooks that talk about how to put this prefix together. For a Tlingit verb, there's a prefix and a stem. You learn how to put the prefix together by sort of figuring out what things are changing and how are they interacting with each other. For this, there's a set of patterns that you've got to sort of learn that says, when will it be long and low? When will it be long and high? And when will it be short and high? And so, and you'll learn those things. But for now, our focus was on ch, t, I, and y. Everybody okay? You okay? Okay. So we'll do one more. There is another way to say you succeeded. You did a good job. And this one's kind of fun. What do you notice about this that's a little bit different than the last one?
There's a negative.
There's a negative, right? So if there's a negative, you also have, there's a positive way to say this, which would look like this, Decay. So first of all, there's a verb root here, which is a good time to pitch. We have a series of Indigenous Peoples Day events coming up at the University of Alaska Southeast. At 9 a.m., there's going to be a discussion with some Indigenous leaders of Southeast Alaska. We're going to tell a raven story. We're going to talk about Indigenous Peoples Day in Alaska and how it sort of came to be a statewide holiday. And then we're going to talk about what does it mean to say unceded territory. And we're going to talk about tribal sovereignty. In the afternoon at 2:30, we're inviting folks to a Zoom session to talk about the future of language revitalization. We're going to have some folks from Hawaii there with us, have some folks from British Columbia there with us, and some folks from across Alaska there with us to just talk about what have people been doing and what's coming up. I bring that up because this series of events, maybe I'll just show you folks the poster, if I could find it. Okay. So when we were thinking about...
I'm working on it, Kune.
Oh, goodness, sheesh. So when we were thinking about what to call this thing, we were having just a session, and I somehow mentioned like glorifying the colonizer, which is usually what happens, right? Like the pioneer parks of the world, or of Alaska especially, and the statues of, and you know, the hotels and the everything and the bays, right? So and so just through our sort of planning session, someone's like, oh yeah, we'll call this event glorifying the colonizer, which was like a topic we were going to, I was like, well, we might end up kind of glorifying that, or maybe someone's going to come and be like, I'd love to hear about glorifying colonizers, and then, you know, and then it's going to be something different. So we went with Katukaksekehinde. So there's this verb in here, which is really, it's an advanced form of this next one we're going to look at. So there's this verb, which in some forms is akausake. Akausake as a verb could mean a singular third person, they, tracked the footprints of an animal or a person. They undid some of their beadwork. You know, they call it ripping up the beadwork, or, you know, you just cut it out or you undo it. They undid their sewing. So, you know, you sewed something and you got to fix it, so you got to rip it back a little bit. Or they undid their weaving. So you were weaving something and you undid it. All of those are the same verb. And you could also say they untangled it, like a ball of yarn or some rope or something. Akausake. So you put ka in front of it, to for inside. Here's a noun popping onto a verb. Tóoch. That's the name of a river where there's this young man named Tóoch who offended the salmon. So they came and took him, turned him into a salmon for a year. When he came back to this place. It happened. It's a thing. We still have that name. We still have this story. And they changed him back into a person. But this is sometimes translated as peaceful river. And then it's also towards the river. In this case, the name for our day of events is towards the river that untangles a person's mind. So Lichéesh for putting, there's a flyer in the chat, and if you look at that flyer, these links should work if everything worked out.
What a beautiful name. What a beautiful name for that event. Like, I appreciate the humor and sassiness of like glorifying the colonizer because it's painful but true. But this feels so healing for everyone in a way that just feels like what a gift.
Lichéesh. As we talked about decolonization and stuff, and we're trying to figure out words for it, and there's different ways you could sort of talk about it, but then we just sort of came back to this and thinking about the way Cyril explained this name to us in this story, because it means it untangles a person's insides. And this verb is really neat. So this verb, though, if you were to say Decay, or you could say Decay, so there's an object pronoun right on the front. The positive form of this means literally to come undone, like the edge of a basket that's sort of falling apart. And it means, like if you told someone Decay, you're saying you failed completely. Which sometimes we'll laugh about that. So the reason we might laugh about it is we might say Decay. And in some cases it's not a big deal. Like you know, if I messed up and it's like a little mistake, but I'm making fun of myself. I say, Decay. I really messed that up. Right? Like I sent something and autocorrect did something or something, whatever. Typo. But it could also be a pretty serious thing. Like my uncle passed away, and I wanted to get up and say something memorable, and I messed up, and that could be a really harsh thing. And so I could say, and I could be feeling really bad. But the negative form is, you didn't completely fail, or you didn't fall apart. And that's a really neat way to say, congratulations. It's just there's certain things are just very Tlingit. I don't know. They're just another thing was there's this Raven story where he says, you know, you'll be okay. I'm gonna give you these words of encouragement. And so then the little owl does the thing and it goes the way the little owl thought it would. It goes bad. And his beak is burning off. And so Raven, here comes his words of encouragement. And he says, just to cut that gednik, just yan hun. Everything hurts. You just got to bear it. And so those are his words of encouragement. So, but it does mean you did a good job, but it's a little bit of a cheeky way to say it. I learned this from Bertha Karras, she was really proud of what we did, but then she told us that and then laughed. And so, to one person, Clesh ikau de ke.
Clesh ikau de ke.
Clesh ikau de ke.
Decay.
To more than one people, Clesh ikau de ke.
Clesh
Decay.
Decay.
Clesh ikau de ke.
Decay.
Fun, yeah. You had an opportunity to really mess that up. Oh, all right. Okay, sheesh.
Lichéesh.
Ah,
Cheers.
let's do a couple weather things, and then let me do a couple more sentences from the story we've been doing a slow crawl through. Let's see. What am I trying to get? So to ask how the weather is, you say Wasakuati.
Wasakuati.
T.
Wasakuati.
Wasakuwati.
T.
If you're from Sitka, you say Wasakuyati.
Wasakuya.
Wasa. Kuyati.
Wasakuyati.
Wasakuyati.
Okay, so that is how is the weather. There are situations where that could technically mean how are the people. But there is this little thing on here. So some of us might know, let's see, if I were to just sort of change this, I don't have to worry about that form. What would this mean? Wasayati. Anybody know? Wasayati.
How is it? I thought
How
it would.
is it? How is it? Right? Because we usually hear it like this, wasayati. Right? So that tells you there's an object pronoun. You could say wasa. Oops. What is that C thing? Wasakhatyati, which would be weird because you'd be like, how am I? Because it would be like, I don't know. You should know, right? But this just shows you where that pronoun is. The k on here, so Tlingit has a whole bunch of little parts. It's made up of a whole bunch of little parts, quite often, especially a verb. And sometimes those little parts have homonyms, right? Homonyms are not a big deal. They sound exactly the same, but they'd mean different things, right? Like if I said bow, you might be like, oh yeah, he's talking about bow and arrow. I'd be like, no, my cousin Bo, right? Or a bow you put in your hair. But we get those from context, right? Context just kind of reveals it. So there is a fourth person pronoun, which means people. So it happens to people, or people are this way. How are people? Sometimes it's ka, sometimes it's k. Most often it's k. But there is another k, which has to do with a given area or space. And when it goes on to certain verbs, it just shifts it to weather. So, wasakuati, how is the weather? So the weather could be good. And if it's good, you would say kuwake.
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 So what happens is if you put k right onto yak-a, it kind of pushes this y to become a w. So ya to wa. It's going to happen all the time. A y to a w. If you're from Sitka, you'd say kuyak-a. So kuwak-a is the weather's good. I put all the pictures on there because maybe some people like the wind. I don't know. Usually it means calm weather or probably sunshine. But for sunshine, you'd say audagon.
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 Outdagon.
Audagon.
Audagon.
And
Outdagon.
this little thing here, this y, because that's why there's a W right there. When you start hearing ow in the front of a verb, we're usually looking at a perfective verb. And so the reason because we could say there are some verbs that could be the same. You could say tatke audagon. It was sun shining yesterday. Yayidatsu audagon. And right now, it's sun shining. But we would be using a perfective verb for that because it's not focused on time.
Is it like the sun has shined?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the verb itself is perfected because it's kind of already happened.
Yeah, there's a number of things in Tlingit where it must have happened in order for it to kind of be that.
Exist. Yeah.
Like you got to know it to know it. So then knowing it always has a perfective marker in there. Chwasiku. And you hear that wa, you hear that in there. It's cloudy. Push a goose.
Goose.
Push a goose.
Goose.
Push a goose.
Goose.
So for those of us who are starting to learn Tlingit, whenever we see an L, it's going to be the sh sound. So there's no ul sound. That's one thing to just sort of focus on. There's also, whenever we see this apostrophe, that means you need to make that consonant sound without using your lungs, which is why it comes out pretty forcefully. That's important because goose is a cloud and goose is a female body part. You know, my kids speak Tlingit, and one day she was just speaking English to us, and she was pretty little, and she said, and then I saw a goose, the one that flies, not the one down here. So I was like, yeah, okay. But she said pretty matter of fact, and she just kept rolling with her story. So. But now you know, you have to put that on there, right? Okay, other types of weather. Warm weather. Kuwata. Kuwata.
Kuwata.
Kuwata. But this one, so if you just took the k off of there, you're saying it's hot or it's warm. Yata.
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 And so if you think about that thing we did with the good day and the good everything, so if we did that same thing here, we put that y on there and we said heen. Yata heen. What do you think that is?
The river is hot or the water is hot.
Yeah, hot water, right? Hot water. So if you need to say, and sometimes that's what people use for tea or something like that. But yatayin, that would be hot water.
What if you wanted to say I'm in hot water?
Oh, it depends if you're submerged, if it's submergible, how deep you're in the water. But if you are fully in the deep water, fully in the hot water, you would say yatayin tak yechatyati.
Yatayahin tak yechatyati.
So here's the talk, which means in a body, it's usually in a cavity or something you could submerge into, and it could be between the two walls of a cliff. It could be you're in some sort of cavity, is what we like to say. But it's also in water deep enough to submerge, which could mean you're sitting in the water up to here, or it could mean you're actually underwater. But if you had any sort of thing to be somewhere, you could throw yechatyati at the end. That's the verb to be located somewhere. And it's the same yati as in wasa'iyati, which means to be. Right? So then I could say, how would I say you are in hot water?
Yechatyati.
Yeah.
Right? And
Oh,
we
you
could
added to the e. Yeah. Okay.
the verb, that's where you could change it, right? Even though you got this big phrase, it all comes down to the verb. Because now we could be in hot water, y'all could be in hot water, they could be in hot water. People could be in hot water. In that case, I'd probably use kayati. For yati, I would always use kayati, just because there's a kuwati weather verb, and it'll get confusing. Well, we went in the hot water. I guess we got to get in the cold water. Cold weather, kusiat.
Hot.
Kusiat.
Kusiat.
And when we're running Tlingit classes, we quite commonly have folks calling in from Tlein and Whitehorse, and so we'll be talking about cold weather, and it's like 30 degrees here, and they're like, it's 40 below. You don't even know. They'll tease us. So what do you think se'at would be? If we did
Cold.
yeah, it is cold. It is cold. So if we sort of had this thing, we did this kind of fun thing. And if we just put that on here, which I think I'll try to do. How would I, oops, let's just change this back to, let's stick with me. So how am I going to get into cold water? What do you think is going to change?
First word, the yet, yahi goes to siat, siat.
Se'atihin. So se'atihin with this little I on it. That's cold water. Se'atihin tak yechatiti. Now I'm in the cold water. You got some kind of physical therapy treatment. You get in the hot water, you get in the cold water. Or people just do that to like reset the blood stuff, I don't know, oxygen, whatever they do. So, because it's Tlingit, there's usually different ways for different things. Tlingit loves categories. It's like, as a language, it's like, are we doing categories today? Oh, we love categories. We put everything in categories. So, we have kuwat'a, hot weather. We have yat'a, it's hot. Yat'ayi, hot thing. And I'll tell you, we tried to say yat'ayi cake for hot dog, and we got scolded. So don't use that for hot dog. The scoldings will come. We thought it was funny. They say it's a nasi. We're like, it's intestines? Yeah, they're like, it's something's intestines. Like, I don't know. Fine. So I've got something over here on the left. We'll say it and then I'll ask you what you think it is. Khat kaudu wasai.
Kaduasai.
Khat kaudu wasai.
Do a sigh.
And what do you folks think that is?
I feel hot.
So a person wouldn't be you. There's an object pronoun on here, but you wouldn't say khat yat'a unless you'd been cooked or something like that. I don't know if you'd ever say that. Khat kaudu wasai is technically I am perspiring, I'm sweaty, right? And so another fun just sort of language moment. Someone was walking around with my kids and we used to have them just take them on walks. We had these friends and they were learning Tlingit. They're getting really good with Tlingit. So I said, speak Tlingit to my kids. Like they know Tlingit. And so they were walking around and this one friend of mine said, Khat kaudu asai. And the younger sister, my kids were probably like 2 and 4 maybe. So the 2-year-old asked the 4-year-old, her older sister, what's sigh? So she isolated the verb root. I was so happy because we don't know how kids learn Tlingit because it's been so long. And her older sister turned around and she goes, sweaty. So, and she was right? So khat kaudu asai is how you talk about I am as a human being hot. So let's say this one. Khat sewa'at. Khat sewa'at.
Sewa'at.
What do you think that is?
I am cold, or I feel cold.
I am cold. Yes. So this is how a person would be cold, right? So this is a cold thing. This, again, if someone, they're probably not living if they're sa'at. But what this adds is, I'll show you the parts that are on this one. So here's khat, and then you have sa, y, ya, and then at. So what this sa part is the base of the neck, but also a voice. So there's just these, and you're going to start, the more you learn Tlingit, the more you just learn a whole bunch of patterns. And I think it's a balancing act for everybody. Like how much do you get fascinated by these patterns, and then how much do you just sort of find um, these things that help you to talk, right? So like to say khat, and um, going back to the pronouns, how do you think you would say you are cold?
You are cold. E,
Eh, say
e,
wa at.
is.
Right? Say wa at. So this, spotting that that's an object pronoun, that's one I can change. I could cycle that through. Hasse wa at, they are cold. Ye say wa at, y'all are cold. Ha say wa at, we are cold. So sometimes you're using those things, you're sort of getting these things, but I got to be able to build these patterns in my mind so I can shift through these things. Other times you start thinking about the logic of it, like, whoa, well, why is it the base of the neck and blah, blah, And sometimes you can get really fascinated with that stuff. But then you also have to do the speaking and the listening. You have to keep speaking and you have to keep listening, or else it just becomes this thing you know about, right? And you want to know how to do the language, which comes from making it a language of use, which is collectively, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. There's not enough people who speak it. But if we just keep speaking it to each other, and that's the whole goal, is like we learn to say, how are you? Good to see you. How's the weather? And then we start figuring out, like, what else do people want? And we start learning how to say those things. Okay. Any questions?
Quick one. So like in English and in German and like if you say I am hot, like you might be saying like I'm sexy. In Tlingit, with the verb root being what it is, that connotation isn't there, correct?
Yeah. So if you just said chet sewa ut or chet kaut, like chet kaut to a sigh is I'm sweaty, which it's up to you how you interpret that. But that's not it's not it couldn't be really like I'm this. But interestingly, like so going to this weather chapter, I'll show you folks this. So in the beginning Tlingit workbook, which I have open, okay, yeah. So I'll go to the chapter on weather, and you go through, and it's got all these same pictures in the same order. So like, we do sunshine, cloudy, hot weather, but it doesn't do as much of the other stuff, like I am hot, I am cold. And then it goes through and you say really, too much, and then you get precipitation, which I think you can only say snowing or raining using the precipitation verb. Those are your two options. There are words for hail and for sleet or snain, whatever you want to call it. Fine rain, it could be foggy, windy. But you go down, and then there's this verb like I am wet. And if you were making a workbook and you're just doing internet searches, like you're not going to find really what you're looking for. You just don't go do an internet image search for I am wet. Like it's just like all this inappropriate stuff. I was like, and then I was like, then I had a wet dog. I was like, I guess a wet dog. But then I found like this artist who made this cute little like thing with boxes, and so I bought the rights for this design. I was like, that is a nice one. But that's another thing, right? Just like tuck is just like I went outside and I got wet. And so English and other languages do have these sort of things where it's like you could say this and it could mean this, but in other contexts it could be this sort of sexual thing or sort of bragging thing or this other. And I think it does have quite a few of those kind of innuendos. And then there's a whole advanced vocabulary class for the stuff, like as far as like there's a whole bunch of stuff you can talk about. And those are kind of fun. Those were not in the dictionaries that were being made in the 70s and the 80s, but starting in the 90s, a linguist, Jeff Lear, I think did a really good job. Just trying to say language needs to be able to talk about everything, whether you're pooping, peeing, doing things people really enjoy sometimes. Like all this stuff. And so it's there are ways you can sort of, but usually if it's more like you're gonna say, like you say, ach eat yan uwaha, I'm hungry. But you could also, if you said ach eat at uwaha, you're saying the feeling has arrived at me. And it's sort of like that's getting pretty, it's getting pretty serious. Any other, we didn't get to our story, that's okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
I had a random weather related question. So there was that article about Nagas and the snake-like clouds.
Mhm.
So what would it be if you're talking about the vertical misty moving clouds?
Oh, yeah, I've wondered that. And also, I don't know, and I also don't know about the clouds that move real fast, kind of over the mountains. Sometimes you see that. I do know someone said it. I didn't catch the
Cause yeah, I had fallen down a rabbit hole trying to look that up, and I got to Shandakeen.
Oh, like flying up.
Hashadaki.
Okay.
Essentially, they got up or rise, I guess was the verb they had in there.
Yeah, I think that's for people though, because it has to, a bunch of the standing, sitting stuff has to do specifically with people and how they stand up or sit down, and but I'll see if I've got a colleague and a friend in Teslin who works with an elder on the regular, and I think they enjoy some of the more puzzly questions. I do know, I think they say,
The other verbs I came up with was keet or yakit for move through air, or
oh, okay.
poot for move steadily. But yeah.
I can't tell you in English that that's called cloud scud, which I thought was just a terrible, terrible name. When I did that article about Nagas, I asked the weather service and I said, what about this beautiful where it looks like the cloud, or, the trees are respirating? And he was like, yeah, that's called cloud scud. And I was like, I'm gonna leave that out of the story. So if Tlingit has a better word, that would be good, but also
So scud is a verb in English?
no.
No, it
Scud
is. It
isn't
says, well, it says in the dictionary, it says scuds, scudding, scudded,
huh.
to move in a fast straight line as if driven by the wind. We lie watching the clouds scudding across the sky.
Wow. It's a gross word. Let's fix it.
Okay, no more scudding. Clitty scuddick. I don't know. That's how you'd sort of make it into a tlingit for fun. Lichéesh. What goodness cheese, folks. Always fun. Bring your thoughts and questions. After weather, we'll keep doing weather a little bit, and then we'll probably get back to our story with the two little kids and learn how to fish. And then I think after weather, like including weather, would be sort of like picking which kind of clothes to wear, and then we could do sort of like put it on, take it off, and there's some major things with that, which depends on like which part of the body does it go on, because that gets specified in the verb, of course, because it's always categorizing. So happy studying, folks. I hope you can join us on Monday if you got some time. There's a morning session, afternoon session. Always bring your questions. We'll maybe talk next week as well about study groups and how to find other folks to talk with, and some ideas that we've been working on. 9 a.m. is the tribal leaders conversation, and then on Monday, and then 2:30 p.m. is the panel discussion on the future of language revitalization.
And then 4:30 p.m., a small circle of leaders are going to go head over to the Zach Gordon Youth Center So bring a dish and bring a drum and come celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day with some awesome young youth.
Yuck, and we will record our sessions. We'll probably try and live stream them on YouTube. I'll see if I can figure that out by Monday. And then if that fails, then I'll just post them on YouTube after. So, yuck. All right.
Jaké, kunnas tjus.
Uh,
Jeez.
okay.
Kunnas tjus.
Oh, that's from the deck of cards? Oh yeah,
Oh.
that's right.
Hannah, you're muted if you want to be heard. You gotta.
I thought I unmuted it. Okay, so yeah, it's the Trickster company card games have a card in them with classifiers on one side and pronouns on the other side. So if you have that deck of cards,
There's your card. I forgot about that. It was funny when those came out because he reached out and he wanted to put a couple of Tlingit cards in there, so I made.
Yep.
And then one of my students bought the deck and was excited, but then he looked at that card and he says, "You know what they should do next time?" I was like, "You mean what should I do next time? I made that. I just want you to know you're criticizing me." I was kidding, but I listened. It was good.
and then all the interjections on the other cards, so that's fun.
So you could play. Oh, we should do. Okay, maybe we'll do card games too next time. That'll be fun. Because then that comes back to the obtaining, defeating verb, which is important in that. Okay, my kid forgot our lunch. I better run it down. Good choose.
Thank you.